Yo, what is up, guys? Delboy here, aka Blue Collar Sports TV. Hopefully, you guys are doing well. If you're new here, smash that like, hit subscribe, all of that good stuff. So, Andy Ruiz defeats Luis Ortiz by a close-ish unanimous decision to win a WBC title eliminator. Now, my overriding thoughts going into this fight, my prediction was Andy Ruiz UD, but basically, I kind of said that this fight you will see, the age of Luis Ortiz, and it will cost him. I mentioned in my video that a few years ago, maybe 4 years ago or so, I would have confidently picked Luis Ortiz to outbox Andy Ruiz. And having watched this fight at Luis Ortiz at 43 years old, I stand by that. If this fight happened a few years earlier, I just think Luis Ortiz would have outboxed Andy, but in this fight, you could see that Luis Ortiz's age is getting to him now. His punch resistance isn't what it was. I think his balance looks worse now, and he's now reaching in with his shots. And when he throws his punches, it's almost like he's pushing them. Like it's a real effort to throw punches. The guy's an old man now, and I think we saw that in this fight with Andy Ruiz, but he still gave Ruiz trouble in this fight. First round opened up, and, interestingly, both guys, taking a look at each other, but it looked like both guys were taking the role as the counterpuncher. Both guys having a look at each other. I felt Ortiz was a little more active with his jab, and he landed the best shot of the round, which was a straight left hand. Round 1 was close, but I felt Luis Ortiz took it, to be honest. Round 2, though, Luis Ortiz was dropped twice. I think it was a lazy jab from Luis Ortiz, and Andy Ruiz countered with a compact overhand right, and it caught Luis Ortiz on the top of his head, on his or near his temple, I think. And it dropped Luis Ortiz. Luis Ortiz was badly hurt. You could see that his legs were not steady. Andy Ruiz then tried to jump on him. He kind of landed a barrage of punches and clubbed Luis Ortiz down for a second knockdown. Now, me personally, I don't think the second knockdown was a knockdown. From what I saw, and I only saw one replay, but from what I saw, Luis Ortiz had his gloves up. The punch hit the gloves. It wasn't a scoring shot, and he kind of just got bundled over, but the referee called it as a knockdown. So, round 2 was a 10-7 round for Andy Ruiz, and honestly, it looked like Luis Ortiz could go early, but he actually came back quite well in round 2, and he caught Andy Ruiz with some really good straight left hand counters down the pipe, which really rocked the head back of Andy Ruiz, but Andy was never hurt. But good heart from Ortiz in round 2. Now, I felt after round 2, so sort of rounds 3 to 6, I felt Luis Ortiz probably won more of those rounds than he lost. Andy Ruiz was just, because of the knockdown maybe, or the knockdowns, I think Andy Ruiz, it looked like he was just looking for one perfect shot, more so than working. His jab wasn't active, he wasn't throwing combinations, he was sitting and waiting, whereas Luis Ortiz, he wasn't doing much himself, but he was active with his jab a little bit, he was picking and poking, couple of straight left hands here and there. Ruiz would land the odd counter, especially the overhand right, and sometimes the straight right hand to the body. But I felt from rounds 3 to 6, Luis Ortiz was kind of controlling those rounds. Maybe he didn't win all of them, but I think he won more than he lost. But round 7, Andy Ruiz showed a bit more impetus, and he actually led with an attack against Luis Ortiz. First, he caught him with a really good lead, sort of really straight right hand, bang on the chin. It hurt Luis Ortiz. And shortly after, Andy Ruiz closed the gap, and he threw a short right hook, which caught Luis Ortiz on the temple, and it dropped him. It was very similar to the shot he caught Anthony Joshua with for his first knockdown against Joshua. And that shot hurt Luis Ortiz. So round 7, another knockdown for Andy Ruiz, and a big shot as well. At this point, you can tell that Luis Ortiz's punch resistance just isn't where it needs to be at this level, and even when Ortiz was boxing well, you just had the impression when Andy lands it's going to do something, whereas with Luis Ortiz, he landed some good shots in this fight on occasion, but they never really had a big effect on Andy Ruiz. And after round 7, I felt it was pretty evenly fought. But, you know, Andy was landing a few more power shots in the latter rounds, and you actually saw the effects of that because Luis Ortiz's, I think it was his left eye, was badly swollen, and it was getting worse as the fight was progressing in the later rounds. I think it was round 11 where Andy Ruiz caught Luis Ortiz with another right hand, a straight right hand, and it caught Luis Ortiz right on the eye, and it looked like it made the eye swell even more, like instantaneously. Andy Ruiz definitely upped his work rate a little bit as this fight played out. And I felt he finished the fight okay. Although having said that, Luis Ortiz tried to come out in round 12 because he knew he was down on the scorecards. He came out and he was gunning for it, you know, he was throwing the 1-2. He was actually catching Andy Ruiz as well with some good shots. Luis Ortiz definitely won round 12, but ultimately I think he should have done that a lot earlier, maybe round 10, you know, just try to roll the dice and really put it on Andy Ruiz. Yes, there's a chance you could get countered with Andy's fast hands, but I felt the writing was on the wall after the third knockdown. There was no way that Luis Ortiz was going to win this fight on points, so I felt he should have emptied the tank, so to say, earlier on. But yeah, I mean, despite the 3 knockdowns, the scorecards were relatively close. And it goes to show, if Luis Ortiz stayed on his feet in this fight, he would have won this fight, because in the rounds where nothing was happening, and there was a few rounds like that, I felt Luis Ortiz was in control, really. He was the guy dictating with his lead hand. Again, he wasn't doing too much, but I felt he was doing more than Andy Ruiz. It looked like Andy Ruiz in this fight fell in love with his power a bit too much. He was trying to look for a perfect shot too much in counter. He wasn't really taking the initiative and launching his own attacks. And against a guy like Luis Ortiz who can be cagey, you can lose rounds that way. And yeah, Andy's performance was weird. I think it was like the typical Andy Ruiz performance. Moments of real explosiveness, moments of actual quality, because some of his straight right hands were really, really good. And he showed some good timing at times and a decent, decent hand speed, that sort of thing. But at times he was just so inactive and so lazy, just kind of following Ortiz around and not really doing much. It was the typical Andy Ruiz performance. You saw the best of him with the explosiveness, the speed, and you saw the worst of him with the laziness and inactivity. But he won the fight, UD, and after the fight he was talking about future fights. He mentioned a third fight with Anthony Joshua. I wouldn't mind seeing it. But more importantly, or more interestingly, in my opinion, he mentioned a Deontay Wilder fight. Now, this was a WBC eliminator, this Luis Ortiz-Andy Ruiz fight, and I think Deontay Wilder versus Robert Helenius is also a WBC eliminator. Why not Andy Ruiz versus the winner of Helenius-Wilder for a final eliminator? I would love to see, and I think Wilder wins that fight against Helenius, but I would love to see Wilder versus Ruiz. And honestly, again, I have to see what Wilder looks like against Helenius because he took a lot of punishment against Fury both times. But as of right now, if Wilder comes out with that same energy that he did in the third Fury fight, I think he beats Andy Ruiz. I would make him, I'll reiterate, I would make him a favourite. I would make him a favourite over Andy Ruiz right now. Those periods of inactivity would worry me against Deontay Wilder. Having said that, of course, if Wilder throws that right hand, he falls in, he overshoots, Andy can counter him with that left hook or that short overhand right. So it's a fascinating fight. I think that's the fight that should happen next for Andy Ruiz. I think it does good business in America. Deontay Wilder fans will come out and support that fight. The Mexican fans will support that fight. To me, it makes sense. I think that's a great fight. But yeah, I mean, the fight between Ruiz and Ortiz, there were moments of excitement, but it never really caught fire. You know, it never really caught fire. But yeah, I mean, share your thoughts below. What did you make of this fight, and where should Andy Ruiz go from here? And what did you think of Andy's performance? Quite frankly, I wasn't all that impressed, you know, but there you go. Share your thoughts below. Been your guy, Delboy. Peace.